Hi everyone, welcome here today. I am Professor Katerina Hertog. I'm an associate professor in AI and society here at the Oxford Internet Institute. To everyone online and in the room, welcome to the Revisiting Uncertainty, the Governance of Assisted Reproductive Technologies in China. We're really delighted to have here today with us Dr. Tiantian Chen to discuss the reasoning and tactics behind the controversial criteria of providing fertility treatment and related practices in Chinese clinics. It's never straightforward, and it's fascinating to find out how it happens in China. Tiantian is a research associate at the Oxford Internet Institute and a collaborator on the Geographies of Digital Divide research project. So we've been working together for close to a year now. And she's been brilliant to work with. She is also a trustee of Global Health 50/50, a charity that advances gender equality in global health. She obtained her PhD degree in sociology at the University of Cambridge, and this is, I think, coming out from her PhD, which is soon going to be published as a book as well. Her research interests mainly focus on studying technology, health-related technology, through the critical lens of gender. The presentation today, just a few housekeeping points for those of you who are here for the first time today. The presentation will run for about 30 to 40 minutes, followed by a discussion at the end. If you are joining us online, please put your questions into the Q&A box, or you could also raise your hand, and Ellen, our events organizer, will make you live, and then you could ask on camera. For those of you in person, maybe please save your questions to the end of the talk and then just raise your hand, and I will moderate. For your awareness, this event is being recorded and will be posted on our website following the event. If you're joining online and wish to ask questions with your camera on, oh, that I said already, just raise your hand. Okay, it's great to have you here, Tiantian, and over to you.
Thanks for organizing. Okay, so let's start. So first, a little bit about me and like why I'm here. So I'm interested in conducting health research through the critical lens of gender. So that's the reason why I studied egg freezing policies while I'm conducting a PhD in University of Cambridge. While I doing research, I'm also interested in combining academic research with business and political advocacy. So when I was a PhD student, so I started two initiatives. The first one is called QED, Sustainable Urban Development. So this is a company which transforms brownfield sites into affordable housing. So this is the picture of the houses we build. It's made of shipping containers, and it's for affordable housing in London. Also, the second initiative I joined is called Global Health 50/50. So it advances gender equality in global health organizations. And in 2021, we registered as an independent charity. So I serve as a trustee of the charity. With the penetration of AI into public health, I'm also interested in how digital technologies can close gender health gap. So that's the reason why I joined in a research project at OII and become a research associate here. And then, like many people might ask me why I'm interested in egg freezing policies in China. So it dated back to 2015 when I drafted my research proposal for PhD project. A message popped on my phone, and I read the news talking about how Xu Jinlei, this lady, she is a famous Chinese actress. She shared her egg freezing experience in her interview with a Chinese lifestyle magazine called Whisper in 2015. And her interview triggered heated online debate on the government's regulations on reproductive technologies. And it even netizens even created an emoticon called 染病卵, but there's no active use to criticize the government's regulations. Out of curiosity, I began to do some research on why the government doesn't allow single women to freeze eggs. And to my surprise, there's not many sociological studies on this topic. Most studies are legal studies. They talk about whether ARTs should be allowed or not. So that's the reason why I started to doing a PhD and doing research on the rationale behind the regulations of these health technologies. As we all know, reproductive technologies are associated with miracles or hopes. In the magazines, we usually hear the stories like infertile couples seeking medical treatment for many years and finally get a baby with the help of IVF, or professional women who postpone their childbearing age and freeze eggs. In my opinion, these technologies are also power technologies. On the one hand, with the development of reproductive science, human reproduction is no longer thought to be subject to divine curses. So this figure is called Goddess of Mercy. Guan Yin, she is like when people want to have a baby, especially have sons, they will worship this figure in order to fulfill their wishes. But with the development of reproductive science, people can gain some control over the fertility issues. For example, with the development of pre-implantation testing, we can do sex selection before the childbirth, or even eliminate some genetic diseases. And when we consider the notion of power in a bigger context, like in the context of a state, the development of ARTs is also a symbol of national power. For the Chinese government, the achievement in ARTs is a symbol of their successful technology development. So here is a timeline. So at the bottom, this is where the first ART babies are born in the world. And at the top of the timeline, this is the time for the first ARTs babies in China. So we can see from here, the first IUI baby in the world is dated back to 1793. And the first IUI baby in China is 1983. It's like 200 years gap. But the first IVF baby in the world and the first IVF baby in China is only 10 years gap. And we can see like the gap is shortened and to the first egg freezing babies. So this timeline indicates China has reduced its lag behind the technology, the fertility technology development, and they the advancement of the technologies indicates China has made great progress in developing its own ARTs. Here are some reports, newspaper reports commenting the development of ARTs in China. So the first one is from China Story. It is an official media source. And this line is commenting the success of the first IUI baby in China. So as we can see, it marks a new beginning for technology and indicates that China is catching up with Europe and America. And the second one is from People's Daily. It's also an official Chinese media. And this piece comments the first test tube baby birth in China in 1988. And from the lines, we can see her first cry not only marked the birth of a new life, but also reflected the breakthrough of a modern medical technology in China. So both pieces indicate ARTs, like the reproductive technologies in China, indicates an increase of national power. Then here comes to the regulations of ARTs. So the regulations started from 1999. The Department of Science and Education in the Ministry of Health they issued 4 categories of technologies. These 4 technologies are the technologies that should be encouraged, technologies should be explored, technologies should be limited, and technologies should be prohibited. And ARTs belong to the technology that should be limited. And then in 2001, 2003, and 2006, the MOH set up further conditions to use ARTs, such as regulations of sperm banks and regulations of fertility research. The regulations remain unchanged since 2006. So the regulations we can see today were the regulations in 2006. So it was not changed in this like almost 20 years. The regulations are quite controversial for three reasons. The first one is clinicians should follow medical indications when they decide whether to perform ARTs on patients. So that means you need to have a medical reasons in order to conduct fertility treatments. This criteria is debatable for two reasons. The first one is many people think the criteria is gendered because if men don't need man can free sperm for social reasons or personal reasons, while women can't freeze eggs for personal reasons. And the second reason is the boundary. Many people think the boundary between medical and non-medical reasons is ambiguous. So we can take example of age-related fertility decline. So cancer patients can freeze their sperm or eggs because due to cancer. But what if like women who postpone their fertility cycle due to work or education reasons, why they can't, why like these reasons are not legitimate. So many scholars think there shouldn't be a hierarchies between medical and non-medical reasons. The second debatable criteria, which is like maybe the most well-known criteria, is the regulations restrict access to ARTs for most Chinese single women. In other words, if you're single, then you can't use fertility treatments. And this criteria is debatable for two reasons. The first one is marriage is also not a prerequisite for freezing sperm. Single men can freeze sperm from no problems. And the second one is some legal scholars think this policy deprives single women of reproductive rights. They thought eggs are women's private property, so they should have rights to decide how to use their properties. And the last controversial regulation is clinicians should consider patients' socioeconomic, psychological status before they start treatments in order to avoid medical disputes. So at first glance, this regulation should be well received among patients because it benefits patients' interests. But when I conducted ethnography, I find this requirement is not well received among many clinicians. They thought they're quite busy, so they don't have time to take fully care of the patient's interests due to shortage of medical resources. So then my research question is, how can we understand the rationale behind these controversial regulations? And in today's talk, I will just tackle the first one. So why do the regulations urge clinics only to perform ARTs for medical purpose? Is that because the low success rate, or how, and also how do clinicians interpret or handle age-related fertility decline in real world clinical practices? To answer these questions, I did a qualitative research in China. The main part of my research is a ethnography. So I visited a clinic called eClinic. So it was a leading public clinic in Beijing. Patients were coming from different parts of China because this clinic has a very high success rate. In addition to a public clinic, I also visit a private clinic. So I visited a private clinic because I saw their advertisement in a food cargo. So they claim they can do some illegal services, but actually they have a license from the Ministry of Health, which is weird, but yeah, but they have but they claim they can do like sex selection and some gray area business. So I visited this private clinic, and I also go to the fertility agencies. So this is one of their office. So fertility agencies, because there is very controversial regulations and also restrictions. So some people who seek fertility treatment, they go to overseas clinics, and these fertility agencies bridge patients in China with overseas clinics. So they provide a translation service and also escort service. So I visit these agencies and see how they can like circumvent these restrictions. I also visit feminist salons because the single woman's reproductive rights is a heated topic in China, and there are some feminist salons discussing these issues. So I visit to these salons. So so that's like my ethnography part. And for the interviews, I interviewed the clinicians, policymakers from Ministry of Health, and also People's Congress, patients, advocacy groups. And I also read some policy documents and application and funding applications for these technology research. So before I went to the field, I thought low success rates might be the reason why there's so many restrictions and like controversial regulations. So here is a table from CDC, American CDC. So basically, there are various of success rates, such as embryo fertilization rate, pregnancy rate, single-term live birth rate, and multiple live birth rate. Some clinics tend to market their embryo fertilization rate and pregnancy rate because they're high, but not all embryo transplantation will lead to successful birth. And also successful birth is related with many factors, such as patients' characteristics, lifestyles, quality of clinics. And this is a form from American CDC. So you can enter your age, your weight, your height, and like how many times you have used IVF in the past, and if you have prior pregnancies, and then you can calculate your success of IVF treatment. So this form indicates clinicians can predict your success rate with different factors. And indeed, during my fieldwork, clinicians told me they can predict the success rate, and actually the success rate largely depends on age. So that means a success rate, like low success rate, is not the reason why they only perform ARTs for medical reasons. They perform ARTs for medical reasons because the results were uncertain. So here's a quote from a specialist at P Clinic. She commented on a lady who was infertile for unknown reasons. She tried IVF in P Clinic for several times, but failed. But surprisingly, after she returned home, she found she was pregnant. She got pregnant naturally. So this afternoon, after Dr. D's consultation, this lady came to her office and gave her baby's gift, like the red eggs. That's a gift for your relatives when a new baby was born. And then Dr. D commented this case. She said, "This is me. You should write about this in your research." if you have children in your Ming, you will finally have children. Then how do we understand the idea of Ming? So Ming could be interpreted as a heavenly mandate determining human life. So this is the character from Animal Bones in Shang Dynasty. So we can see the structure of this character. So the top of it is a temple, and this is a man kneeling down on the ground. And then later Ming was involved into this. Again, there's a temple and a man kneeling this, but there's a mouse besides the man. So it means Ming is related with order, and the order is a heaven order that determines human life. So when we use Ming, when they use Ming to interpret the results, then that means fertility results is dependent on heaven order. So it's not controlled, it can't be controlled by human behavior or fertility treatment. So this is another story. The lady name was Yuan Hong. She was 40. She conducted IVF in P clinic. In order to get pregnant, she gave up drinking before her first IVF cycle, but she failed. And then she was so anxious that she drank a bottle of beer. Then for the next cycle, she found she was pregnant. So scientifically, there's no relationship between drinking a beer and getting pregnant or like succeeding in your IVF cycle. But this lady attributed to her pregnancy to her drinking behavior. Her stories indicates so her pregnancy was destined. It's whether she drank or not is irrelevant of her fertility results. She got pregnant because she was destined to get pregnant. And then the question is, how can we know if a person is destined to get pregnant or is destined to have a baby? The question is no. So according to Dr. D, we can only wait until children are born. So that means having an order is unknown beforehand. So we can only know whether a person can succeed in a fertility treatment until children are successfully born. But so clinicians who has advanced scientific knowledge didn't know Ming, but fortune tellers know. So here's the story of Rongfang. She was 35. I met her besides a results machine. She was waiting for her results, but she was not anxious. She told me the reason why she was not anxious because a fortune teller told her she would have a baby this year. So here is the quote from Rongfang. So she purchased a piece of magical paper from the fortune teller. And then Rongfang was quite confused, like if she was destined to have a baby, why she failed IVF cycle before? The fortune teller said she hadn't reached the time to have children, but the fortune teller knows she would have a child this year. Yeah, so this was another lady. She also saw that pregnancy is all about having order. So if you have children in Ming, then you will get pregnant anyway. If you don't have children in Ming, you will never get treatment regardless of you will never get pregnant regardless of fertility treatments. So this lady, in order to get pregnant, she gave up her business. She stayed on the bed all day long in order to get pregnant, but her first cycle failed, and because she no longer produced enough eggs, all she can do is to is to give up. And then this time she finds she got pregnant unexpectedly. She didn't stay in bed this time. She walked outside and go shopping. She resumed her business. So that means like no matter what she did, she can get pregnant because she was destined to getting pregnant. So if we attribute fertility results to heavenly order, does that mean we can't exert any control on fertility treatment? The answer is no. There's another related concept that my interviewees frequently raise. This concept is called 报应. So 报应 in Chinese means reward or punishment. It's related with heavenly order. So it means if you obey the rules, you will get rewards, you will get good 报应. But if you disobey the rules, then you will get punishment. So this lady, she went IVF treatment in P clinic. At the time of, so everything was fine, but on the day of her husband's sperm retrieval, the doctors can't retrieve her husband's sperm because the sperm was not qualified on that date. And then this lady was very sad. She said the reason behind the unqualified sperm was her abortion experience, and she saw like this like failed cycle was a punishment of her previous abortion experience. So here we can see her quote. So it is 报应 that my husband's sperm is unqualified and I haven't been able to get pregnant. I was already very regretful. In addition to abortion experience, delayed childbirth can also be a punishment. So here's an article shared on WeChat platform. So the clinic doesn't support delayed childbirth or postponing childbirth due to education or career reasons, because women will get stuck in a situation of childlessness. So it's a punishment of conceiving children in later life. And Guilan also has a similar idea with the previous article. She told me the story of her niece. Her niece was 29, has a graduate degree and work in the hospital with a high salary. She is married, but doesn't have children. And Guilan thought like the reason why she doesn't have a children because she married late and conceived children late. And this is a punishment for her. And she also cautions me. I was 23 at that time, and she cautions me and told me like I have to marry and conceive children in early life, otherwise I will receive the similar punishments. Because of the influence of Ming and Baoying, fortune telling business and begging business were very prosperous outside the clinic. So people give money to the beggars, not only for kindness, but also to fulfill their wishes of getting pregnant. So then the question is, if the fertility treatment is full of uncertainty, but and it's quite surprising that uncertainty is in the narratives of by clinicians who has advanced knowledge. Then how we understand this uncertainty in this context? So I come up with it's closely related with the idea modernity, how uncertainty is changing in the idea of modernity. So in the modern world, like we know religion gradually loses its authority, and people begin to act based on reason and evidence. And the idea uncertainty is reduced to calculable notions of risks. And I used the example of insurance, how insurance industry emerged from Europe and America. So like the storms or like are no longer uncertain, but it was reduced to a calculable risk that people can rationally manage. The idea, so the idea of modern or modernity was also well received by reformers in China. The concept was introduced in China from the end of Opium Wars, but Chinese reformers adopted the idea in slightly different way because their aim was to help China to catch up with advanced Western countries. So that's the reason why they tend to use the idea of modernization rather than modernity, because it captures the sense of development. And from the late Qing dynasty to the rule of Chinese Communist Party, governments developed different strategies for modernization. And the most well-known modernization strategies was initiated by Chairman Deng Xiaoping from the end of 1970s. And these plans helped China become a major world economic power. Then let's see what are included in 4 modernizations. Here are some posters promoted by the government at that time. So the first one is to contribute to science and technology development. So scientific development is a key part of 4 modernizations. And this is the same. We can see the background, there's rockets. And it also suggests science and technology research is key part of modernizations. And here are the 3 posters. So this one, this one urges people not to believe in the happening order, but to do the revolution. And this one is also get a sense like we can control the nature. And this one is we can use the technology in any context. So these three posters indicate a sense of controlling nature or using the technology to achieve some goals. So the 4 modernizations have dramatically changed the landscape of China. Here's one example is urbanization. So from 1980, only 19.39% of population in China lived in urban areas, and the urbanization rate raised to 66.2% in 2023. But urbanization also brings some problems with pollution and also the lack of arable land are the side effects of urbanization. The second example is technology development and also the abuse of technology. One of the very shocking news of technology abuse during my fieldwork is the gene editing babies in China. So this Chinese scientist, he successfully produced the world's first gene-edited babies who were genetically resistant to AIDS. The government's reaction to like this research success was first very positive. So we can see the news from People's Daily. So it praised the world's first genetic edited babies. And then also this research received government funding from the South University of Science and Technology of China. So this funding responds to the government's call for massive investments in technology. So the uncertainty that my informant raised is a response to these side effects of using technologies. So here is a quote from Dr. D. So we can, from these lines, she compares some excess use of fertility treatment with plastic surgery or like cutting trees. So now they realize the problems that has brought about and demolished buildings to plant more trees. China has learned a lot of lessons. So her quote indicates the reason why ARTs are limited because they realize the problems or the side effects of abusing ARTs, and they encourage to follow nature rules rather than abuse the technologies. So this idea of dealing with the side effects of modernization is also promoted by the current government. The first line was an example from Central Committee for Deepening Overall Reform. They passed a plan to improve the ethics of doing research. And the second example is the slogan promoted by the current leader, Chairman Xi. She raised a theory called Two Mountain Theory to encourage sustainable development. And also the comments of the fertility treatment also indicates Chinese way of using technologies. And this Chinese way of using technologies is different from American way of using technologies. So again, here's a quote from Dr. D. She criticized US for abusing technologies. And she gave me an example of her friend who did sex selection, who tried to do sex selection in the US, but failed eventually. And this example, she uses this example to suggest you won't get good positive results if you abuse the technology. Okay, and so this Chinese way of using technologies echoes with the government emphasis of modernization with Chinese characteristics, or the current leaders prefer to use the term the new era instead of modernization because it's different. It captures the essence of China's unique cultural tradition. So here is my presentation. So any questions?
Thank you. I can moderate the questions. Maybe I can keep an eye on the screens if there are questions popping up. So do we have questions on the wall? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. But I'm personally quite lost in the relationship between uncertainty and modernization, because one of the branch for modernization is modernization of science technology. So it seems like the modernization of technology should lead to the high successful rate of this fertility technology, but still we got the low and uncertain rate. And also, that's my first question. And also, why this modernization leads to people's belief in Ming and dynasty? I mean, what's the relationship between Ming and the later part? So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So for the first question, like the so the relation, yes, because we all know like for modernizations, so the key part is science and technology development, and also like people like also the government promotes to get rid of Ming because it's a superstition belief, and this is not good for the development, and so then when I did my fieldwork and my informants, especially clinicians, told me the fertility results is dependent on me, then this quite surprising comment, I treat that as a response to the development of technology, or like how to use the technology properly, because they realize the limits of technology, and like the results are dependent on happening order rather than people or the technology itself.
So I mean, there is no obvious causality between these two. That's just like people's response. Or
Yeah, it's like people's reflections upon the use, how like their use of technology. And the second question is how the relationship between
yes, Ming and modernization.
oh, the relationship between Ming and modern. Yeah, again, I think it's so if we look at the modernization path of China, then it's quite surprising, like Ming or like all the like religious beliefs pervaded in clinicians' narratives, and I treat these narratives as their response to the previous modernization strategies or to previous usage of technologies.
I think it's not a question, but more like curiosity. So it seems like in the field work or in the interview, all the like people who get a baby, who did not get a baby, and also the clinicians who actually control the technologies, they all talk about me. So did you ask them like if they totally like if they believe in this religious, or just if they believe in this me, why do they try to use technology to control the result?
Yes, I did ask the question. So on the one hand, they use Ming to like reflect upon like American ways of using technologies, and also like how they promoted technologies in the past. On the other hand, Ming is also a very good excuse for not getting babies, or because it was dependent on heaven, then it's not your responsibility for the failure of the treatment. So like some women did told me they feel better when they know it's out of their control.
We have a question online that I'd like to pick up, and then if there are more in the room as well. So this is from Samantha, our collaborator. Thank you for the great presentation. Did the one-child policy or population control ideas influence fertility policies or behaviors at all?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the second part of my book. Yes, the one-child policy, I mean, like the one-child policy, or like the birth control policies influence the development of ARTs in general. So when ARTs was introduced, actually people ask, why do we need to do IVF? Because we have such a huge population. We don't need so many babies. And then the researchers, in order to get funding from the government, they brand the IVF project in a way of eugenics. So it's a way of promoting healthier births rather than getting more babies. And then, and now because China is facing a population crisis, so the government is again funding the IVF treatment in public hospitals because they saw it was a way to get more babies. So I mean, so the development of the technologies is closely related with the government's agenda on population policies, or like family planning policies.
That's really interesting. If there are no immediate questions, I have a question. I was quite fascinating presentation. I was wondering about the gender there. So whether there was a gendered understanding as well, because you told us about the concepts of Ming, which maybe is like destiny or something along those lines, and the punishment as well. And they seem mostly to apply to women, at least in the quotes that we I was wondering, is it ever used to explain men's infertility? Like, for example, in one of the failed cases we hear about from your presentation, it's a man's sperm, but that was a problem. And yet it was her punishment somehow.
Yeah.
So that was quite an interesting leap, I thought.
Yeah, so yeah, the reason why like man's narratives are quite absent in this study is because most patients in the hospitals are women, even if it's their husband's problems, like women tend to blame themselves for not getting pregnant. That's the first reason. And second one is men get treatment quite easily than women, so they don't need to spend long time in the fertility clinics. So for IVF cycles, women tend to stay in Beijing. If they are outside Beijing, they tend to rent a flat outside the clinic because they need to spend 1 or 2 months to get the treatment done. And they came to Beijing alone without their husbands. So that's the reason why like most of my informants are women rather than men, because I can't meet their husbands. Their husbands are away. But for the gender, for your question, like if men's infertility has any like sense in this research, I did remember Dr. D. She gave me her idea. She said the social development is at the sacrifice of male fertility power, because and she encouraged single man to free sperm or donate sperm because the fertility power in China is declining and they're quite concerned. So that can be one of the reasons why single men can free sperm in China.
Oh, so then like sperm quality.
Yeah, sperm quality is declining.
We have another, okay, great. And then we have another question, but I'm quite like going to.
Thank you, sorry. And so very beginning when I like read your topic, I thought your research is focused on the regulation and like people's confrontation with that regulation, but then you introduce the concept of mean. So it's kind of reminds me of another like ethnography project in China about the suicide in rural China. It's called like 扶生取义.
Yeah.
And that project, the author kind of introduced the concept of justice, of social justice and family justice to like explain this suicide phenomenon. So for me, my humble opinion, I thought that it's more easily to understand like social justice. But here by like mean and destiny, do you think is there like any further potential possibility to give it like another explanation by that? Because mean is kind of like mental physics. So
yeah, so I think this like actually in the studies of different cultures like India and Africa, researchers on fertility treatments, they also find like the patients attributed the success rate to a religious belief in their cultures. And Ming is quite a unique Chinese statement of heaven and order. So that's the reason why I use this term. And I also like I use this term because like they frequently mention that and it's quite significant.
yeah, but as she mentioned, like most of Chinese are religious, are non-religious.
Yeah, so it was not like I think they used like this term very practically. They don't adhere to religious belief. And the lady who told me the fortune telling stories, she didn't believe the like Buddha forms, like Buddha beliefs, but she wear the amulet and she take the advice of that fortune teller very seriously because it benefits to the situation. So they use they use the term very practically.
We got 2 more questions online. Sorry, yes, maybe we could also. So one is from Gabriela Contreras. Sorry if I mispronounced the surname. So who is saying extremely interesting. Thank you. I'd love to know if you've got a feeling for how women felt with government, or perhaps about government policies impacting their reproductive making decisions. So did anyone sort of question that? From one-child policy to the topic of your research, do people seem frustrated or just accepting of this?
Okay, so first question, so before I did field work, I did a media analysis of the Weibo and like do a Python research on how people respond to Xu Jingli's interview and government's regulations. Actually, like the regulations were heavily criticized by the netizens, and they saw it was a lose of reproduction autonomy, and women and some even say it's a kind of a modern slavery, which is a very serious word. Like basically people criticize these regulations a lot. And the second is the one child.
So the one was about how did people feel about this? I think you answered the Gabriela's question. Was there any pushback about the policies and controlling female reproduction? One child policy would be one of those, but mostly in relation to yours. And then there's another question from Yiyun Bai, who's saying, hello, Tiantian, thank you for the presentation. I am curious about your interviewees. Are they mostly married heterosexual women or heterosexual couples? Or did you also interview single women and queer groups, for example? And how do the gendered fertility policies affect their fertility choices and experiences?
Yes. Yeah, so for this topic, I only answer the first question. So that's kind of situated in the public clinic and also the clinicians. Because there is a marriage certificate requirement, so people go to public clinics, they are married couples. So that's the reason why in this talk, like the interviewees are all married heterosexual women. But actually, when I try to get understanding like why the government restrict single women from using fertility treatment, I interviewed single women who either have conceived children in American clinics or plan to freeze eggs in overseas clinics. And I also interviewed homosexual couples who conceived children with donated sperm in foreign countries.
Did they talk about Ming?
No, they don't. But they also talk another kind of uncertainty. It's called paternal uncertainty. So that's related with the second question, why the government restricts single women from using fertility treatment.
Yeah.
Do you think that the private clinics would also accept serving queer people, for example? Or do you think there's just really, you mentioned there's a gray zone, but even they have like a hard cut for some things, I guess. But yeah, how far did you get into what they were willing to do if you paid them?
Yeah, so as far as I know, so they allow egg donation, which is not allowed in. It's allowed, but there's because there's no egg bank, so there's not sufficient egg donors. But for private clinics, they allow egg donation from your friends. And also they allow homosexual couples or single women using donated sperm. So they can perform, like the areas they can perform is actually quite broad.
Okay.
So this is just actually, that's very interesting. So the regulation that you talked about, it's that, so if that clinic is caught, it's found out that they are serving single women, what's going to happen? So it's not a binding legally? Or?
No, I asked this question. So I asked the official from Ministry of Health, and they told me if they find some clinics doing illegal work, they will fine them, but they won't withdraw their license. And the fine payment at that time is like 40,000 RMB, so not a lot.
What's the procedure? How much do
It's
they
like
earn on the procedure?
5,000 pounds.
So how does it compare to like how much a procedure costs? I'm just wondering.
For IVF, it's like so in public clinic, one cycle is like 40,000 RMB, but in private clinic it can be like 200,000. So
yeah. So the fines are
It's gonna be rich.
Another question is like, do you find any, like in your interviewees or ethnography fieldwork, do you find lots of like maybe narratives or stigmas associated with ART, like not only for single women, but also for couples? And also, do you think like the government policy, the change of government policy from one-child policy to three-child, which promotes like birth rate, do you think those policies and agendas can change or change a little bit of the narrative and stigmas associated with this technology, or especially women who receive this treatment?
Yeah, I mean, I find two stigmas. The first one is the stigma related with infertility, and it's also closely related with women's infertility. And the second stigma is actually from sex selection. We know like China forbids sex selection, or like ultra B sounds in order to detect the sex of baby before birth. And there's some demand for sex selection, but the patients who seeking sex selection, they tend not to use these words or not to like speak it loudly. One of the reasons because of it's illegal. The second reason is they know sex selection is stigmatized. It's not a good thing.
If we have time, maybe for one more question.
From my understanding, there seems to be a conflict between those who are more superstitious, who like believe in mean more, and those who are critical of like the governmental policies. How would you characterize this divide between these people, like maybe demographically or whatever?
So you mean the people who believe in the religious belief, and what's the other
And
group?
people who are critical of the policies. Would you say they're like two distinct groups?
Yes, I think like people who criticize the government regulations are major professional people. When I did like the media analysis, I got a map. So there, most of the netizens are coming from Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou. They are like urban areas in China, and they tend to use Apple rather than Android system. So that means they're financially better than Android users, and also 70% are female. They have education. As for their education backgrounds, they have at least bachelor degrees.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting, and the Q&A session as well. Thanks everyone for being here, and for everyone online. Thank you.